Hello and welcome back. I'm Father Jason Tyler, pastor at St. Joseph Catholic Church in Fayetteville, and I'm happy to share with you another video with some thoughts on the Interregnum, the papal transition process between Pope Francis and whoever comes next. And it's an exciting time right now. As I'm recording this, this is Thursday, May the 8th, just after 10 o'clock in the morning, Arkansas time. So by this point, we've already seen two puffs of black smoke go up. One was Wednesday afternoon, our time, and then the next one was this morning, just before 5 a.m., about 4:50, 4:51 in the morning. And so what that means is they've had three votes. They had one vote Wednesday evening in Rome and two on Thursday morning, and have not yet reached that two-thirds majority that's needed to elect a new pope. And so we continue watching. It's possible, very possible, that by the time you see this video, that we will have a pope already. You know, if you look at the last few conclaves, 2013, when Francis was elected, that was on the second day of the conclave, which would be, essentially, he was the fifth ballot, so roughly corresponding to about noon or so today. If things were to follow exactly that pattern. Pope Benedict XVI in 2005 was elected on the second day, fourth ballot overall, so probably more like 10:30 or 11 in the morning here in Arkansas. And with John Paul II, you're going further back, his election occurred on not the second day, but I believe the third day of the conclave. So it's possible, that we stretch it out into Friday. If it goes beyond Friday, then, we're looking at a longer conclave than what we've seen in the last few. But by historical standards, that would still not be very long. At any rate, what I want to talk about today is not so much the conclave itself, but something that happens afterward. And that is the Papal Inauguration Mass. You'll hear it sometimes referred to as Inaugural Mass, Inauguration Mass, and part of that's just how are you translating it into English. But one of the things I want to make clear, it's not an inauguration the way that we have a presidential inauguration. A presidential inauguration means the president becomes president when he takes the oath of office at the inauguration. Prior to the inauguration, the president-elect is not yet president. He does not yet have authority. But with the Pope, his inauguration is more symbolic. It's inauguration in the sense that inaugural means the beginning. It's the solemn beginning of his pontificate, if you will. Not the beginning, but the solemn celebratory beginning. The reality is the Pope becomes Pope at the moment he accepts his election. And so within the conclave, there in the Sistine Chapel, behind closed doors, as the College of Cardinals gets to that two-thirds majority, the senior cardinal bishop, and if you want to know that term, go back and look at my video about the College of Cardinals and the different ranks they have. But the top cardinal, usually it's the dean, in this case it'll be acting dean, asks the one who's received the two-thirds votes, so do you accept your election as Supreme Pontiff? And if the man says yes, then he is the Pope from that moment onward. So at any rate, an inauguration, but not in the sense of a presidential inauguration. Historically, we used to have what was called a papal coronation, a papal crowning. Now, again, the coronation did not make him Pope, but it was symbolic. And in fact, we saw this in Britain, right? When King Charles III had his coronation, it was actually several months after he had already been king. He was king from the moment, really, his mother, Queen Elizabeth, had died. But there was a coronation to celebrate that some months later. Well, in the old days, the papal coronation, it was not months later. It was probably a week or two after the election. But it was called a coronation because that was when the Pope received the Papal Tiara. And that was the big crown that the popes would wear. And if you look at any pope from John the 23rd prior, you'll find pictures of them with the Papal Tiara. And that was this like three-level crown. And it looked a little bit like a bishop's mitre, but more like, again, these three levels. And there were different things that were symbolized there. Primarily this idea of Jesus as priest, prophet, and king. The Pope is his vicar, and so he is exercising in some ways a share in that ministry of Jesus as priest, prophet, and king. Corresponding to that, we speak of the church having a ministry or a duty to teach, to govern, and to sanctify. And so those three elements come into play there. The papal tiara, of course, was something that was unique to the Pope. You did not see other bishops wearing a tiara. And the tiara was used up until 1964. Pope Paul VI, now St. Paul VI, he became Pope in 63. He actually did have a coronation, did have the tiara for a bit, and then he set it aside in 64 as a sign really of renouncing human glory and power. And keep in mind, 1964, we're just at that point 94 years since the Pope had lost, or since maybe you say the papacy had lost, temporal control of the Papal States. So, going back in history for hundreds of years, there was a big chunk of central Italy that was basically the Pope's kingdom. It was called the Papal States. And the Pope was the temporal ruler in that area, in that part of Italy. By 1870, Italy unified and the Papal States went away. Essentially, they were conquered when you get right down to it. The Pope from 1870 until 1929 said, I am a prisoner within the Vatican. They didn't travel out and go around the world as we see modern popes doing. In 1929, the Holy See came to an agreement with the Kingdom of Italy that recognized the Holy See's sovereignty over the small area known as Vatican City. And so the modern Vatican City state we have today, it really goes back in that way to 1929. But all of that, I'm saying, going through that history lesson just to say that when the papal tiara was a thing, when it was used regularly, you have to understand part of its origin is not only in the Pope's spiritual power, but also the fact that he was a temporal king for a lot of that time, and kings wore crowns, and so the Pope had his tiara in a way. And as symbols do, it kind of held on for a while after the loss of the Papal States, but Paul VI, again, he set that aside in 1964, and he said, from now onward, instead of wearing this tiara when I'm celebrating Mass, I will wear a mitre, just like other bishops do. The Pope, as we know, is the Bishop of Rome, and so wearing the mitre emphasizes his role as a bishop, as the Bishop of Rome, as the successor to St. Peter's. Again, the Pope wearing the bishop's mitre. Nowadays, the Papal Coat of Arms, though interestingly, kept the tiara in the background. So if you want to just look up John Paul II Coat of Arms, for example, you'll see kind of the background. It has a picture of that tiara. Paul VI had the tiara in the background of his coat of arms as well. And I would assume John Paul I did. I didn't actually look. I mean, I briefly tried to look that up, and I couldn't find it. I kept seeing images of John Paul II. John Paul I, of course, was only Pope for 33 days. But the tiara stayed in the coat of arms. Now, that's in part because heraldry sometimes takes a while to catch up to things that are happening in the broader world around. And it caught up, as it were, in 2005 when Pope Benedict XVI became Pope, and his coat of arms right away had a mitre in the background. Again, the bishop's mitre, the tall pointed hat that the bishop wears. Benedict XVI had that in his coat of arms instead of the tiara, and that's then what we see in Pope Francis's coat of arms is also the mitre and not the tiara. So again, getting all the way back to where we started, there will be not an installation mass. There will be an inauguration mass of Pope Francis. And the reason I almost slipped up is when a new bishop comes to a diocese, there is an installation mass. But there's a big difference here. When a bishop is named, even someone who's already a bishop and he's getting maybe transferred to a new diocese, his installation mass is the point at which he begins to have authority as bishop of that diocese. So he really is truly installed as bishop at that point in that place. And prior to that moment does not have the full authority to govern his diocese. But the Pope, again, as soon as he accepts his election, he is the Pope and he has the full authority to do what he needs to do as Pope. But the inaugural Mass for the Pope is, again, more of a celebration, more of a solemn beginning. One thing that happens there is the senior cardinal deacon will bestow the pallium on the new pope. The pallium is this kind of thing that goes around the neck, goes down the back a little bit, has this tail that kind of comes down the front. It's something actually that all archbishops wear, so within their province. And so, like in our case, in Arkansas, Bishop Taylor is not an archbishop, so he does not have a pallium. But the Archbishop of Oklahoma City wears a pallium anytime he's in the state of Oklahoma or in the state of Arkansas, because that's all part of his ecclesiastical province. But the Pope has a pallium that he wears, wherever he travels, anywhere in the world. Pope Benedict XVI actually had a very different sort of pallium. He had a very large, kind of long pallium. I believe it was maybe an Eastern-type design or something that he used for a while. And maybe not, I don't think he used it exclusively. I think he used the smaller pallium as well, certainly toward the end of his pontificate. I have to go back and look at pictures to remember for certain. But Pope Francis did basically go back to the pallium that is more typical in the West. It's more typical of Latin Rite archbishops and the Pope. And so we'll have to wait and see what the new Pope does. But again, that's something to expect. Let's say if a Pope is elected today or tomorrow, we might see the inaugural Mass as soon as this coming Sunday, May the 10th. Or would that be the 11th? Whatever this Sunday would be. I think that's the 11th. But it would not at all surprise me if he pushes it back to Sunday the 18th, have a little more preparation time, etc. But we'll kind of wait and see on that. The inaugural Mass is an occasion we hear the new Pope preach a homily. He kind of can talk about his priorities a bit. He visits the tomb of St. Peter on that day as well, as a way of, again, connecting himself to the apostle who's at the origin of that office. So, all right, well, thank you for listening. I really appreciate everyone who's joined in along the way. This is the 14th I believe it's the 15th of these videos that I've done. I do plan to do one more, and that'll be after we have a pope. And so I'll just give some kind of concluding thoughts and wrap up on that. So this is not the very end, but if we don't have a papal election today, there may be a gap of a couple days before I make a new video. So this is the last of, I guess, trying to do one every day, but I do expect to do at least one video to wrap things up at the very end. So for now, again, thank you for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, share, let other people know if you'd like. And again, as we continue in this joyful time, Happy Easter.